You're looking at your plant, and it gives you no reason to worry. The leaves are full, the color feels alive, and everything looks exactly how it should. So you relax. You tell yourself it's healthy. But here's the question most people never ask. If it's so healthy, why do plants that look perfect suddenly collapse? Why do they stay fine for days, even weeks? And then, without warning, everything starts falling apart. Because the truth is, nothing about that moment is sudden. The collapse you see is just the first time the plant can no longer hide what's been happening all along. It was struggling quietly underneath the soil. The roots were weakening, slowly losing balance, long before the leaves ever changed, but you couldn't see it. Because plants don't show you the problem when it begins. They show you when it's already too late to ignore. And that's why this keeps happening. You trust what you see, while the real damage is happening where you never look. So if you've ever felt confused, if your plants always seem fine until they suddenly aren't, then this is the moment everything starts to make sense. Because once you understand what's really going on beneath the surface, you won't just take care of your plants differently, you'll see them differently forever. What looks healthy is often hiding the first signs of collapse. The surface of a plant is a performance. It shows you only what it can still hold together. Leaves stretch upward, holding their green colors, standing firm, as if everything is stable and as if nothing is wrong. And when you see that, you relax. You assume the plant is doing well. You tell yourself it's healthy, it's growing, it's fine. But this is where the misunderstanding begins. Because plants don't show stress right away. They don't panic. They don't suddenly change overnight. They absorb the damage first. They hold it inside quietly, patiently, trying to survive for as long as they can inside the soil where you cannot see. The roots may already be struggling. They may not be getting enough air. They may be sitting in too much water, slowly weakening. They may not be able to take in nutrients properly, but none of this shows on the leaves immediately. The plant keeps sending them energy upward just to keep its appearance alive, so the leaves stay green, they stay firm, they continue to look normal. And this is what makes it so dangerous, because the plant looks healthy. At the exact moment it is starting to fail, and you trust that look. You believe what your eyes are telling you. You think, if it looks fine, it must be fine. But the truth is, the real condition of the plant is not on the surface. It is hidden in the roots, in the soil, in the balance you cannot see. And that hidden part is where the real story's happening. Slowly, silently. So when one day, the leaves begin to drop, the color starts to fade, the plant suddenly looks weak. It feels shocking. It feels like something went wrong overnight. But it didn't. That moment is not the beginning of the problem. It is the result of everything that was already happening before. Days ago, sometimes even weeks ago, and the plant was already struggling. You just couldn't see it yet. And once you understand this, you stop judging your plant by how it looks today, and you start asking a deeper question. Not, does it look healthy? But, what is happening underneath that I cannot see? The care you believe is helping is quietly suffocating the roots. You don't ignore your plant. You care. You check on it. You water it. You adjust it. You try to do everything right. And in your mind, that care feels like love. It feels responsible. It feels like you're protecting the plant from harm. So you give a little more water just to be safe. You touch the soil again just to make sure. You move the pot, trying to find a better spot. You do more because doing more feels right. But this is where the quiet damage begins. Right? Because plants don't measure your care by how much you do. They respond to how well you understand their needs. And one of the biggest needs of a plant is space. Space to breathe, space to recover, space to go through natural cycles without interruption. It's the roots hidden beneath the soil are not designed for constant attention. They need air between the soil particles. They need moments where the soil becomes lighter and not always wet. They need time, where nothing is added, nothing is changed, so they can stabilize themselves. But when you water too often, the soil stays heavy, it stays packed. The tiny spaces that hold air begin to disappear, and slowly, the roots lose access to oxygen. At first, again, nothing seems wrong. The plant still stands, the leaves still look fine, because this suffocation doesn't happen instantly. It builds quietly, day by day. Water sitting too long, air slowly disappearing, roots becoming weaker, softer, less active, and still. From the outside, everything looks normal, so you continue. You water again. You think, maybe it needs more, maybe it's not enough. But what you don't realize is you're not giving the plant what it needs. You're taking away what it depends on. Because roots don't just drink water, they breathe. And when that breathing space is gone, the plant begins to weaken from the inside. Not loudly and not suddenly, but slowly, it's like silently. Until one day, the damage finally reaches the surface. Leaves start to yellow, stems begin to soften, growth stops, and now it looks like something is wrong. So you react, you try to fix it. But the truth is, the problem didn't start today. It started in all those moments. And when your care had no pause, when your attention had no rhythm, when your intention was right, but your understanding was missing. And this is the shift most people never make. Real care is not about doing more, it's about knowing when to stop, because sometimes the best thing you can give your plant is not more water, not more action, but a moment of stillness, where the roots can breathe again. The real problem isn't the plant, it's the invisible world beneath it. You keep looking at the plant, the leaves, the color, the shape. You search for signs on the surface, because that's what you can see. That's what feels real. But the truth is, the plant you see above the soil is only a small part of the whole system. And the real life of the plant exists underneath, in the soil, and this is the part most people never truly understand. Because soil looks simple, just dirt, just something that holds the plant in place. So you don't question it, you don't examine it. You assume, if the plant looks fine, the soil must be fine too. But the soil is not just a base, it is the entire environment. It controls everything the plant depends on. How water moves, how air flows, how nutrients are stored and released, how roots grow, and how they survive. And when this hidden world is not balanced, nothing above it can stay healthy for long. The problem is, most soil problems don't show themselves immediately. Heavy soil can hold too much water, turning the roots into a place with no air. Dry soil can become so tight that water runs through it without being absorbed. Old soil can lose its life, like no nutrients, no structure, no support. But from the outside, the plant still stands, still green, still convincing you that everything is okay. And this is where the mistake happens. You try to fix the leaves, you adjust the position, you change how often you water, but you leave the real problem untouched, because it's hidden, because it doesn't speak, because it doesn't show you obvious signs, and at least not in the beginning. So the plant continues, trying to survive in a system that is slowly failing. The roots struggle to spread, they struggle to absorb, they struggle to breathe, but they keep going, as long as they can. And that struggle, it doesn't reach the surface right away. It takes time. Days, like sometimes weeks, before the leaves finally reflect what has been happening below. And when they do, it feels sudden. It feels confusing. Because you were taking care of the plant. You were doing everything you thought was right. But the truth is, you were focusing on the wrong place. Because the health of a plant is not decided by how it looks above. It is decided by how it lives below. And once you understand this, everything changes. You stop chasing what you can see, and you start paying attention to what you usually ignore. You begin to feel the soil. Notice its weight, its texture, its dryness, its smell. You begin to understand its condition. Not just assume it, because the plant is not failing on the surface. It is responding to the invisible world beneath it. And if that world is not right, no amount of surface care, dismono, will ever truly fix the problem. The right action, at the wrong moment, becomes silent damage. You think the problem is what you're doing, so you focus on actions. Watering, feeding, moving the plant, adjusting the light. And you try to do each one correctly. You follow advice. You create a routine. You repeat the same steps because consistency feels safe. It feels like control. But plants don't live by your routine. They live by timing. And this is where everything changes. Because the same action that helps your plant today can quietly harm it tomorrow. Water is good. But watering when the soil is already moist doesn't help the plant. It traps the roots in heaviness. It removes the air they need to breathe. And slowly, it begins to weaken them. High feeding is good, but feeding when the plant is already stressed doesn't boost growth. It overwhelms a system that is already struggling to function. Even moving the plant, something that feels harmless, can interrupt its stability. Plants adjust slowly. They adapt to their environment over time, and when you suddenly change that environment, at the wrong moment, you break that adaptation. You reset its balance. But none of this shows immediately. That's the danger. There's no instant signal, no warning. The plant still looks fine, still standing, still giving you confidence. So you continue your actions. You repeat them, because nothing seems wrong. But underneath, small disruptions are stacking. One wrong moment, then another. Each one too small to notice alone, but together, they begin to shift the entire system. The roots lose stability. The flow of water becomes uneven. The plant starts to struggle quietly. And this is why it feels confusing later. Because when the damage finally appears, you look back and think, I did everything right. And in a way, you did. Your actions were not wrong. Your intention was not wrong. But your timing was off. And timing is everything. Because plants don't respond to effort. They respond to alignment, to the right action, at the right moment, not too early, not too late. And once you understand this, you stop forcing routines onto your plant. You stop acting just because it's time, and you start observing instead. But you check the soil before watering, not the calendar. You notice the plant's condition before feeding, not the schedule. You allow the plant to guide your actions, instead of controlling it with fixed habits. Because real care is not about doing things regularly. It's about doing the right thing at the right time. And when you miss that timing, the damage doesn't shout. It builds quietly until one day, the plant finally shows you what your timing slowly created. What feels stable is often a slow, unnoticed breakdown. There is a stage in a plant's life that feels calm, controlled, almost perfect. Nothing looks wrong. The leaves are still holding their color. The shape is still balanced. There is no sudden change, no visible warning, no reason to feel concerned. And this is the moment where most people completely relax, because stability gives you confidence. It tells you that everything is working. It makes you believe that your care is correct, your routine is right, your plant is safe. But what you are seeing in that moment is not always true stability. Sometimes it is just a slow decline that hasn't reached the surface yet. Plants are incredibly adaptive. They don't give up quickly. They don't collapse at the first sign of stress. Instead, they adjust. They hold on. They try to survive even when conditions are no longer ideal. When the roots begin to weaken, the plant doesn't immediately show it. It slows down internally. It reduces its energy use. It quietly shifts into survival mode. And from the outside, everything still looks the same. And the leaves remained as green, but they are not as strong as before. The growth continues, but it becomes slower, less consistent. The structure holds, but the strength behind it is fading, and because these changes are so gradual, you don't notice them. Your eyes adjust to the slow shift. Your mind accepts it as normal, so you continue your routine. You keep watering the same way. You keep doing what you've always done, because nothing is telling you to stop. Nothing is forcing you to change. And that is exactly what makes this stage so dangerous, because the plant is not improving. It is compensating. It is using its remaining strength to maintain its appearance. It is holding itself together, while the foundation beneath it continues to weaken, and this can go on for days, sometimes even weeks. A quiet struggle, or a hidden breakdown, a slow loss of balance that never announces itself, until one moment the plant reaches its limit. It can no longer maintain the illusion. It can no longer hide the damage, and everything begins to change at once. Leaves that once looked healthy start to fade. Stems that once felt firm begin to soften. The entire structure loses its strength, and you stand there confused, because just yesterday it looked fine, but that fine you saw was not true health. It was delayed collapse. It was a plant holding on longer than you realized. And once you understand this, you stop trusting stability as proof of health. You stop assuming that nothing is wrong means everything is right. You begin to look deeper. You notice small changes, slight slowing of growth, subtle shifts in texture, tiny signs of stress, things you would have ignored before. Because real awareness is not about reacting to visible damage. It is about recognizing the quiet signs before the breakdown becomes impossible to ignore. And that is the difference between a plant that survives and a plant that only looks like it is surviving. By the time you see the damage, the system has already failed. There comes a moment when the plant finally shows you the truth. The leaves begin to lose their strength. The color fades, slowly at first, then more clearly. The stems no longer hold themselves the same way. Everything that once looked stable starts to feel fragile, and in that moment, you react. You move closer. You check the soil. You question everything. What happened? Why is this happening now? Yesterday it was fine. And that confusion feels real because from your perspective, and this change appeared suddenly. It feels like something went wrong overnight. But the truth is much deeper than that. This moment is not the beginning of the problem. It is the final stage of it, because by the time a plant shows visible damage, the internal system has already been under pressure for a long time. The roots have already weakened. They have already lost their strength, their ability to absorb properly, their ability to breathe freely. The balance inside the soil has already shifted. Water, air, and nutrients are no longer working together the way they should, and the plant has already spent its energy trying to survive that imbalance. Holding on, adjusting, compensating for as long as it could. So what you are seeing now is not the damage starting. It is the plant finally unable to hide it anymore. And this is where most people make another mistake. They try to fix everything immediately. More water, less water, new fertilizer, a new position, a new method, quick actions, one after another, trying to bring the plant back to life. But at this stage, you are no longer preventing damage. You are responding to a system that has already been compromised, and that changes everything. Because when the roots are already weak, sudden changes don't heal them. They shock them even more. When the soil is already unbalanced, adding more to it doesn't restore it. It complicates it. So the plant doesn't respond the way you expect. It doesn't recover quickly. Sometimes it continues to decline. And that makes it even more confusing because now you feel like nothing is working. But the truth is, the time to fix the problem was never at the moment you saw it. It was in the quiet days before, when everything still looked fine, when the signals were small, almost invisible, when the system was beginning to shift, but had not yet collapsed. That was the moment that mattered. And this is the realization that changes how you care for plants forever. You stop waiting for visible damage before you act. You stop reacting only when something looks wrong. And instead, you begin to understand the process. You pay attention to the soil before it becomes a problem. You notice small changes before they turn to visible damage. Dare you allow time for recovery instead of forcing quick solutions? Because plants don't ask for help loudly. They don't demand your attention. They simply respond to the conditions you create for them. And when those conditions slowly move out of balance, the plant follows, quietly, patiently, until one day it shows you the result, not the cause. And once you truly understand this, you stop chasing the visible symptoms. You stop trying to fix things at the last moment. And you begin to care in a different way, a deeper way, a more aware way, where you are not just reacting to what you see, but understanding what is happening beneath it. Because plants don't die suddenly. They reveal their death suddenly. And by the time you see it, the story has already been written. The system has already failed. But your awareness, that's what decides whether it happens again or not. So when you look at your plant again, don't just look at how it appears. Look beyond that. Because what you see on the surface is only the final expression of something much deeper. A plant doesn't wake up one day and decide to fail. It follows the conditions you create. And slowly, quietly, faithfully, every small action, every extra watering, every moment you didn't notice, builds the direction it moves in. And the hardest truth to accept is this. By the time the damage becomes visible, the real problem has already been there for a long time. But this is not something to feel guilty about. It's something to become aware of, because once you see this clearly, your entire approach changes. Or you stop reacting to what you see, and start understanding what you don't. You slow down, you observe more, you allow space instead of constant action. You trust timing instead of forcing routines. And most importantly, you begin to respect the silent language of the plant, not just its leaves, but its roots, its soil, its rhythm. Because real care is not loud, it's not constant movement, it's quiet awareness, it's knowing when to act and when to step back. So the next time your plant looks fine, don't let that be the reason you stop paying attention. Let it be the reason you look deeper. Because the goal is not just to keep your plant looking alive, it's to keep it truly living long before anything goes wrong.